Good morning, and I'm pleased to be here. May the Lord bless the words from my mouth to your ears. Earlier you heard the story of David and Goliath. I've listened to this story for many, many times, and you as probably as children. There's certain parts of the story that always had a curiosity about. So I did a little research, and that's what I'm going to share today. Now David, as you all know, was a shepherd boy. He wasn't anyone special. He wasn't of nobility or anything else. He was just a normal shepherd boy. But he was willing to step forward and take on this giant. Now, in the days of David, people were very small. David was actually about 5 foot 5 inches tall, which is about average height for people of that era. On the other hand, Goliath was 7 foot 9 inches tall. So the disparity was quite obvious. Goliath also, as you know, was clad in heavy armor, and he carried a 15-foot spear. So he didn't really have to get close to the people he was after. He had the advantage. This didn't bother David at all. David felt that he was called by the Lord to get rid of this giant. So when David went to where the two armies were stationed in the valley, you got the army on one side and the other, and he's in with where the king is, and he's talking. And all of a sudden, his brothers hear him volunteer to go after the giant. And they get angry because they feel that he doesn't have the power or the ability to fight a foe such as Goliath. It didn't bother David at all, because David knew he was called to do this. He was a follower. He was told that this is what he was going to do. So David ignored all the noise and the negative comments. And he goes to the king. And while he's talking to the king, he hears Goliath. And every day Goliath would get up on the ridge and he would yell, "Who will you send to kill me today? Send someone. And if you kill me, my people will be your servant." And he would echo this every day, but no one would come forward because they were afraid. So David approaches the king and he says to the king, "I can do this." He says, "How can you, as a normal sheep herder, fight such a foe?" "Because the Lord instructed me to. He told me what to do." The king agreed. He let him go out to fight. So again, you heard the story. He put on the armor, and it was too heavy. Now, each of us, if you think about it, we have Goliaths in our lives every day. And we put on armor too. But that armor may not be sufficient to protect us. Your Goliath could be financial, it could be relationships, it could be drugs, maybe alcohol, maybe gambling, lying. It could be all of these things you face in battle every day. And what do you put on for armor? You put on a fake face. You smile, you ignore, you deflect, because you don't want anyone else to know that you're fighting these demons within you every day. Just like David. But David did something that amazed the people. He put on the armor of faith. He knew that if he went out there to fight, that he was protected. That was the element that nobody else expected, and no one else had. So now envision this. David walks out in the middle of the battlefield, and he sees a stream, and he reaches down, and he picks up 5 smooth stones. So I started thinking, why 5 stones? If he's so good, he only needs 1. Why does he have 5? Then I started thinking, well, maybe he's afraid that the Lord won't give him good aim. He may have to throw 1 or 2 stones. Or, as the scriptures say, he had a concern because Goliath had 4 brothers that were giants, and maybe they would attack him if he killed Goliath. So he wanted to be ready, so he had 4 more stones. That wasn't the reason. So when David went to the stream, he looked, and he picked 5 pristine stones. Okay? The first stone was symbolic of the Holy Ghost. David had that within him. So he wasn't too worried about that. The next one he had was service. Now this one I thought was unique because we talked about service to others last week. And David realized that he was put in a position to serve not only the Lord, but his people. Because his actions were going to help all of them, not just him and make him a hero, but it was going to free his people from the tyranny of the Philistines. So service was a very important part of that process. The next one he had was faith. If he didn't believe that the Lord was going to protect him, he probably never would have gone out there. So he internalized that faith, and that was his shield. That was his armor that he had to work and feel that he could take and accomplish the goal of killing Goliath. The next one, and this is sometimes difficult for us, it's called obedience. Right? He knew that if he disobeyed the Lord, that he would pay a price. He didn't question it. He didn't think about it. He was just ready to go out and serve. And he said, if I disobey, there will be issues. So I think he obeyed. And the last one was the one that kept him safe, called prayer. Now I can only imagine that if he's standing there in the middle of the battlefield, and he's got that slingshot, he's whipping it, he's probably praying, don't let me miss, don't let me miss. Right? Because he didn't want to let everybody down. So the reality is that when you're in the battle with your Goliath every day, what do you use for your tools? If you do like David did and you internalize these 5 elements, that's all you need. You don't need any fancy clothes or any, wealth or anything else. Just internalize these 5 things and you will be as protected as David was when he faced his Goliath. Now, we all have issues with Goliaths in our lives. We don't like people to know about them. We don't like to deal with them. And some days the pressure becomes so great, you don't know how to handle them. Right? So, what do? You become a servant. We discussed last week about how you serve others and how it serves you. So basically, I look at David and Goliath as the preface to how to serve people in the most unique way. Because that's what David did. He served all his people. And the end result was, when he killed Goliath, he ended up taking all those Philistines and they became servants. So now God's word was spread through more people. And that was part of the message, was the fact that, let everybody embrace it, not just keep it to a few people. So when you're dealing with things, whether it's, it could be stress, it could be your job related, it could be your relationship, whatever it is, how do you deal with that every day? You can't keep fighting because after a while it wears you down. David knew that he couldn't stand out there and stand up to Goliath and fight him because of the difference in height, the difference in skill sets. There was no way he was going to overpower him. Who would have thought that a little young 14-year-old boy, 5'5", would kill a giant with a stone on the first throw, by the way? Who would think? It's impossible. Unless he had the support that he needed to be able to do that. The same thing goes for yourself. How do you get the support you need to deal with the Goliaths in your life? Do you go tell a friend? Do you go for counseling? Do you keep it to yourself? Or do you find other ways to deal with it, like drugs or alcohol or whatever? Everybody has their own way of dealing with the Goliaths in their life. But the reality is you're never successful because they're always there. I've got Goliaths in my life. I've been fighting them for years, different things. But I found a way to overcome some of those. And I'll share that with you in a minute in the story. But the reality is this, is if you position yourself like you're David, and you understand that if you have these 5 elements, the Goliaths don't have a chance. They may not disappear the first day, the second day, the first month, or the first year, but they will disappear. But you've got to be committed, you've got to obey, and you've got to trust that it's going to disappear. And it's hard sometimes. It's very difficult. Because we don't want other people to know we're suffering with things that we think are embarrassing. We don't want people to know that we may let them down or that we can't provide effectively. It's all about us, but it's not. It's about them. Because we're here to help them do things that they're not capable of doing. So the story that I'm going to tell you is a brief story. And it goes back many years. It's about me, so I'll share with you. It's a true story. I used to work for a company. I was a machinist for 24 years. And I was a management position. Good job. And before my 50th birthday, I ended up getting a divorce after 29 years. So it was really nasty and everything else. That started the Goliath in my life. When I hit 50, the company decided they wanted to downsize. Unfortunately, I was the only one that was downsized. Now, we couldn't blame age or anything else because in those days they wouldn't listen to you. So, the sad part was that I was 6 months away from getting vested, so I never got my pension after 24 and a half years. So the spiral keeps continuing. And then 4 months after that, because I made so much money, my unemployment ran out. I had no income. Now, you can imagine what happens when you're 50 years old. You know too much, you make too much, you can't get a job. I couldn't get a job at McDonald's, I was overqualified, no matter where I went. So the spiral kept continuing. 3 months after that, my dad died. I was a caregiver, he had Alzheimer's, I had to take care of him for about a year and a half. I got to the point where I couldn't deal with the Goliath in my life any longer. It was just overwhelming. So I turned to the one thing that I thought would solve my problem, drinking. And I just figured that was going to solve everything. And I went full bore. I mean, I went bottom level, everything. So this went on about 4 or 5 months. One day a friend of mine comes up to me and says, you know what? I've got something that can help you. I said, what's that? I'd like you to come to church with me some Sunday. Really? I haven't been to church in years. Why would I go to church, right? She says, oh, I think it'll help you. You can't get any lower. It can't hurt any more than you're hurting right now. So I said, well, she's not going to stop bothering me, so I'm going to go. So I show up to church, reeking of alcohol, clothes all dirty because I'd slept in them and all wrinkled. My hair was all disheveled. My beard was growing. It wasn't this long. It was just scraggly. And of course, I'm sitting there, and the first thing I think is everybody's watching me. They're judging me. So I don't know what to do. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, and I had this real old country preacher talking, I started to feel this weird feeling of calmness coming over me. I'm thinking, this is odd. All of a sudden, I don't think about the Goliath in my life anymore, all the pressures and everything else that's going on. It's like I'm in a vacuum and it's just nothing going on. No sound, no nothing, no motion, anything. My mind is blank. I'm thinking, did I die? What's going on? And then it dissipated about 15 minutes later. I was amazed. So my friend introduced me to some people, and they said, come back next week. I'm going, well, maybe I'll try one more time. I ended up going to that church for 13 years. And one of the things that happened was about a month later, the pastor came up to me and he says, you know, I've been told you got some skills. Maybe you could help us out here. We've got some older people. They don't have any ability, and we've got some repairs. Would you mind helping? I'll give it a try. So I show up on a Saturday, waiting for the people to come and help me. Pastor comes over and says, I got something I want to share with you. Thank you. And it was a book. And I'll never forget this because it changed my life. It was called The Art of Giving Yourself Away. And I learned that by giving myself away to other people, diminished all the things that were going on in my life. And things started getting better. I found a job. I got off the alcohol. I started helping people. And I started doing random acts of kindness. And every time I would do something, I would forget about something that was bothering me. It was weird. It was like you step over one bridge and everything behind me you forget. And to this day, I believe in doing what I can do for anybody I can, no matter what it is. I'm an international business coach. I coach business all over the world. And my motto is this. It's not about the money. It's not about how smart I am. It's about, at the end of the day, that I make a difference. Big or small, my goal is to make a difference in someone's life. That goes back to service. And that goes back to what's here. If you can think and act like that, your Goliath will disappear. They're going to go and you won't even know why. And you may be fighting some really terrible ones. It could be things like cancer or loss of a family member. But if you help someone else, that energy will come back and you will appreciate where you are. And you'll be better off for it. So when Phil talked last week about service, it hit a chord. And that's why I want to talk about that today. Because I think that David and Goliath teaches us that no matter how big the obstacle is, no matter how great that mountain is to climb, we have the ability and the tools to do it if we want to look for them and use them. The secret is, a lot of people don't want to use them. A lot of people don't care. And that's the sad part, because we should. So I believe that if you're having troubles and you feel that you can't contain them, look for help, find a friend, but also go out and find somebody like we talked about the soup kitchen today. Things like that. I'll never forget, there was a time I was in a store, in a restaurant, and I love random acts of kindness. It's just so much fun. And I was sitting there, and of course, I'm having lunch, and I see this lady, and I just noticed there was something off. I didn't know what it was, I didn't want to be prying. I looked over, and she's struggling to eat crackers and water. I knew right away this woman was in peril. So I called the waitress over and I said, I want you to put together a sandwich, a drink, and a dessert. I want you to put it over there, put it on my bill. Do not tell the woman. She put the stuff on the table. The woman turned around and she was amazed. Who would do this for me? No one. I have no one I know that can do this. I'm looking from around the corner. She's got tears in her eyes. Because no one had ever taken the time to acknowledge that she had a problem. She felt good, she was nourished, she was enjoyable, and I left feeling my heart was full. And that to me was what life was about. And every time I do that, every time you do that, your life is going to change. You're going to worry less about what's going on yesterday, and you're going to be happier to see what's coming tomorrow. So I encourage everybody, don't be selfish. Be selfless like David. No matter what the risk, no matter what the challenge is, just know that you're wearing the armor of God and He will protect you and drive you. Because sometimes you may feel these invisible hands pushing you to do something that you're unaccustomed to. And that may be Him giving you the hint that you need to do something different to change your life. Because you have something to offer that no one else does. You've always heard the story, right, about being in the right place at the right time? How many of you here have experienced that? Right? It's kind of awesome, isn't it? When you look around and say, you could have been somewhere else, and all of a sudden I'm here, and I'm able to help someone that I never knew. I never knew they existed. I'm so glad that I was picked to be able to do this for that person. And I have to believe that David, after he killed Goliath, felt that way. That he was so glad that he was the one that God picked to do that. And no one else. The lonely little shepherd boy that no one believed in. And you may have people who don't believe in you, but you have a chance to show them. So the words of my pastor, my mentor, my dear friend Merlin Billhorn. May the Lord bless you all real good. Amen.